Charlotte sighed as she stared out the window of her small apartment, watching the rain trickle down the glass. Another dreary day in Seattle. At 38, she felt stuck in a rut. Unfulfilling job, non-existent love life, same old routine day after day. She needed a change, something to shake up her world. Little did she know that change was about to walk through her door. A sharp knock startled her from her gloomy musings. Charlotte wasn't expecting anyone. Curious, she opened the door to find a tall, handsome stranger with piercing blue eyes and tousled dark hair. "Hi, M. Jackson. I just moved in next door and wanted to introduce myself to my new neighbors," he said with a charming smile that made Charlotte's heart skip a beat. "Oh, hi. I am Charlotte. Welcome to the building," she stammered, suddenly very aware of her ratty sweatpants and messy ponytail. Jackson's eyes crinkled as his smile widened. "It's nice to meet you, Charlotte. I was wondering if you might be able to recommend any good coffee shops nearby. I'm in desperate need of caffeine after moving boxes all day." Charlotte found herself smiling back. There was something magnetic about this man. "Actually, there's a great little place just down the street. I was about to head there myself if you'd like to join me." The words were out of her mouth before she could overthink them. What was she doing, inviting this stranger out? But Jackson's face lit up. "That would be great, thanks. Let me just grab my wallet." 20 minutes later, they were settled at a cozy table in Charlotte's favorite cafe, steaming mugs of coffee in front of them. To her surprise, conversation flowed easily. Jackson was funny and charming, regaling her with stories of his cross-country move from New York. "So what brought you all the way out to rainy Seattle?" Charlotte asked, taking a sip of her latte. A shadow seemed to cross Jackson's face for a moment before he smiled again. "Just needed a change of scenery. New York was getting a bit stifling. What about you? Are you a Seattle native?" Charlotte shook her head. "No, I moved here about 5 years ago for work. I'm originally from a small town in Oregon." "Do you like it here?" Jackson asked, leaning forward with interest. Charlotte paused, considering. "I do for the most part. The city has a lot to offer. But lately I've been feeling a bit stuck, I guess, like I'm just going through the motions." Jackson nodded in understanding. "I know that feeling. It's partly why I left New York. Sometimes you need to shake things up to find your passion again." "And have you? Found your passion?" Charlotte asked. A mischievous glint appeared in Jackson's eye. "Well, I've always been passionate about good coffee and good company, so I'd say today's been a good start." Charlotte felt her cheeks flush at the flirtatious comment. It had been a long time since she'd felt this kind of spark with someone. As they finished their coffee, Charlotte found herself reluctant for their time together to end. To her delight, Jackson seemed to feel the same way. "This was great, Charlotte. I'd love to see you again. Maybe I could cook you dinner sometime this week to thank you for showing me around?" Charlotte's heart fluttered. "That sounds wonderful. I'm free Thursday evening if that works for you?" Jackson grinned. "Thursday it is. It's a date." As Charlotte walked home, she couldn't keep the smile off her face. For the first time in ages, she felt a glimmer of excitement about the future. The next few days crawled by as Charlotte anxiously awaited Thursday evening. She agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a flowy floral dress that made her feel pretty and feminine. At 7 p.m. sharp, she knocked on Jackson's door, butterflies dancing in her stomach. He opened it with a warm smile, looking devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a blue button-down that made his eyes pop. "Wow, you look beautiful," he said, making Charlotte blush. "Thank you. Something smells amazing," she replied, breathing in the mouth-watering aroma wafting from his kitchen. "I hope you like Italian. I'm making my nonna's famous lasagna recipe," Jackson said as he ushered her inside. Charlotte's eyes widened as she took in the candlelit table, soft music playing in the background. "This is lovely, Jackson. You didn't have to go to so much trouble." He shrugged, looking a bit bashful. "I wanted to. It's been a while since I've had someone to cook for. I'm just glad you said yes." As they settled in with glasses of red wine, Charlotte found herself opening up to Jackson in a way she hadn't with anyone in years. There was something about his warm, attentive presence that made her feel safe and heard. She told him about her dreams of becoming a writer, long buried under the practicalities of paying bills and climbing the corporate ladder. how she'd slowly lost herself in the grind of her marketing job, too exhausted at the end of each day to pursue her passion. Jackson listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. "It's never too late to chase your dreams, Charlotte," he said softly. "What's holding you back?" Charlotte sighed. "Fear, I suppose. Fear of failure, of not being good enough, and the reality of needing a steady paycheck." Jackson nodded in understanding. "Those are valid concerns, but you're clearly talented and passionate. Maybe we could brainstorm some ways for you to start small, build up your confidence." Charlotte felt a warmth bloom in her chest at his encouragement. "I'd like that. What about you? What are your dreams?" A wistful look crossed Jackson's face. "I've always wanted to open my own restaurant. Create a place that feels like home, where people can come together over good food and leave feeling nourished in body and soul." "That sounds wonderful," Charlotte said sincerely. "What's stopping you?" Jackson's expression clouded. "It's complicated. My family has certain expectations. The restaurant business is risky, and they'd prefer I stick with something more stable." Charlotte sensed there was more to the story, but didn't want to pry. Instead, she reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you'd be amazing at it. This lasagna alone is to die for." Jackson's smile returned, lighting up his whole face. "I'm glad you're enjoying it. Maybe I'll have to cook for you more often." As the evening went on, Charlotte found herself falling harder for this kind, funny, passionate man. When Jackson walked her to her door at the end of the night, the air between them crackled with tension. "I had a wonderful time," Charlotte said softly, looking up into Jackson's intense blue gaze. "So did I," he murmured, stepping closer. Charlotte's breath caught as Jackson's hand came up to cup her cheek. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft and sweet at first, but quickly deepened as years of pent-up longing and desire poured out of Charlotte. Jackson's strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flesh against him as she wound her fingers through his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Charlotte felt dizzy with want. "Wow," Jackson whispered, resting his forehead against hers. "Yeah," Charlotte agreed with a breathy laugh. "I should probably say goodnight," Jackson said reluctantly. "But can I see you again soon?" Charlotte nodded eagerly. "I'd love that." As she fell asleep that night, Charlotte's mind swirled with possibilities. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Over the next few weeks, Charlotte and Jackson were practically inseparable. They explored the city together, trying new restaurants and discovering hidden gems. Jackson encouraged Charlotte to start writing again, even if just for herself at first. She found herself looking forward to their evening writing sessions, curled up on Jackson's couch as they both worked on their passions. One rainy Saturday afternoon, they decided to have a cozy movie marathon. As they snuggled on the couch, Charlotte's head resting on Jackson's chest, she realized she was falling in love. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "What are you thinking about?" Jackson asked, noticing her pensive expression. Charlotte hesitated, then decided to be brave. "I was just thinking how happy you make me, how right this feels." Jackson's arms tightened around her. "I feel the same way, Charlotte. I've never met anyone like you." He tilted her chin up, capturing her lips in a tender kiss that quickly grew heated. Soon, clothes were being shed as they stumbled towards the bedroom, hands roaming eagerly over newly exposed skin. Afterwards, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Charlotte felt a sense of contentment she'd never experienced before. This was what she'd been missing all these years, not just physical intimacy, but the deep emotional connection she shared with Jackson. As weeks turned to months, Charlotte flourished under Jackson's love and support. She started a blog to share her writing, slowly building a following. Her confidence grew with each positive comment and share. Jackson was her biggest cheerleader, always ready with words of encouragement on days when self-doubt crept in. In turn, Charlotte pushed Jackson to pursue his own dreams, helping him research small business loans and potential restaurant locations. It wasn't all smooth sailing. They had their share of arguments and misunderstandings. But they always came back to each other, stronger for having worked through their issues together. On their 6-month anniversary, Jackson surprised Charlotte with a romantic picnic in the park where they'd had their first outdoor date. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, he turned to her with a serious expression. "Charlotte, these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what true partnership and support look like. I love you more than I ever thought possible." Charlotte's heart raced as Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know it might seem fast, but when you know, you know. Charlotte, will you marry me?" Tears sprang to Charlotte's eyes as Jackson opened the box to reveal a beautiful vintage-style ring. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Jackson slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her in for a passionate kiss, Charlotte marveled at how much her life had changed in such a short time. All because she'd taken a chance on coffee with a handsome stranger. Their engagement was blissfully happy, filled with long talks about their future and excited planning sessions. Charlotte threw herself into wedding preparations, determined to create the perfect day to celebrate their love. But as the big day approached, cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect relationship. Jackson grew distant and moody, often working late or begging off date nights. When Charlotte tried to talk to him about it, he brushed off her concerns. 2 weeks before the wedding, Charlotte came home early from a dress fitting to find Jackson on the phone, speaking in hushed, angry tones. "I told you, it's over. I'm marrying Charlotte." "No, you can't come to Seattle. I don't care what you tell them. Figure it out." Charlotte's blood ran cold. Who was he talking to? What was he hiding? When Jackson noticed her standing there, he quickly ended the call. "Charlotte, I didn't hear you come in. How was the fitting?" But Charlotte wasn't about to let him change the subject. "Who are you talking to, Jackson? What's going on?" Jackson's face paled. "It's complicated. There are some things about my past I haven't told you." "What things?" Charlotte demanded, fear and anger warring inside her. "Are you married? Do you have kids somewhere?" "No, nothing like that," Jackson assured her. "It's my family. They're not happy about the wedding, about me staying in Seattle." Charlotte frowned in confusion. "I thought you said they supported us, that they were looking forward to meeting me at the wedding?" Jackson sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I may have stretched the truth a bit. The reality is, my family is very traditional, very controlling. They had my whole life mapped out for me. Take over the family business, marry the girl they chose, live in the same town I grew up in. When I left New York, it was more of an escape than a fresh start." Charlotte felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "So everything you told me about your past was a lie?" "Not everything," Jackson said quickly. "Just the parts about my family. I'm sorry, Charlotte. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid you'd see me differently, that you wouldn't want to be with someone with so much baggage." Charlotte sank onto the couch, mind reeling. "I don't even know who you are," she whispered. Jackson knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I'm still me, Charlotte. The man who loves you more than anything, who wants to build a life with you. My past doesn't change that." Charlotte pulled her hands away. "But it does. You've been lying to me our entire relationship. How can I trust anything you say?" "Please, Charlotte," Jackson pleaded. "I'll tell you everything. No more secrets. Just give me a chance to explain." Charlotte stood, needing space. "I need time to think. I'm going to stay with my friend Sarah for a few days." "Charlotte, wait," Jackson called, but she was already out the door. The next few days were a blur of tears and confusion for Charlotte. She oscillated between anger at Jackson's deception and fear of losing the future they'd planned together. Sarah tried to offer comfort and advice, but Charlotte knew this was a decision she had to make on her own. Did she love Jackson enough to forgive his lies? Could she trust him again? On the third day, there was a knock at Sarah's door. Charlotte opened it to find Jackson standing there, looking haggard and heartbroken. "Please, just hear me out," he said. "Then if you never want to see me again, I'll respect that." Against her better judgment, Charlotte nodded and followed him outside. They walked in silence to a nearby park, settling on a bench. Jackson took a deep breath. "I grew up in a wealthy, prominent family in New York. On the surface, we had it all. But behind closed doors, it was a nightmare. My father was cold and demanding. My mother too afraid to stand up to him. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Charlotte listened silently as Jackson poured out the painful details of his childhood. The impossible expectations, the emotional manipulation, the threats to cut him off if he didn't fall in line. When I told them I wanted to go to culinary school instead of business school, my father exploded. He said I was throwing away my future, that I'd never amount to anything as a lowly cook. He gave me an ultimatum: get with the program or get out. Jackson's voice broke. So I left, packed a bag in the middle of the night, and just ran. I ended up in Seattle because it was as far as I could get from New York. I was terrified they'd try to drag me back. He turned to Charlotte, eyes pleading. I'm so sorry I lied to you. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I was just scared. Scared of losing you if you knew the truth. Scared of my past catching up with me. But I realize now that by trying to hide who I am, I almost lost the best thing that's ever happened to me. Charlotte's heart ached for the scared, lonely boy Jackson must have been, for the man who was still struggling to break free from his family's control. I understand why you did it, she said softly, but relationships have to be built on trust, Jackson. How can I be sure you won't lie to me again when things get tough? Jackson nodded, looking pained. You're right. I broke your trust, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. I promise, no more secrets, no more hiding. I want to face everything together, the good and the bad. He reached for her hand, and this time Charlotte did not pull away. I love you, Charlotte. You make me want to be better, to be brave. Will you help me face my demons? Charlotte searched Jackson's eyes, seeing the sincerity and love shining there. She thought about all they'd been through, all the joy and growth they'd experienced together. Could she walk away from the man who'd brought color back into her world? The man who'd encouraged her to chase her dreams and believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself? Slowly, Charlotte nodded. Okay, but we have a lot of work to do to rebuild trust. And you need to be completely honest with me from now on, no matter how hard it is. Relief and joy washed over Charlotte as Jackson pulled her into a tight embrace. She buried her face in his chest, inhaling his familiar scent and feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. I love you so much, Jackson murmured into her hair. Thank you for giving me another chance. I promise I'll never lie to you again. Charlotte pulled back slightly to look up at him, cupping his face in her hands. I love you too, but we still have a lot of work to do to rebuild trust. No more secrets, okay? Jackson nodded solemnly. No more secrets. I'm an open book from now on. They sealed their reconciliation with a tender kiss that quickly deepened, years of love and longing pouring out. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. So, Charlotte said with a mischievous smile, does this mean the wedding is back on? Jackson's face lit up. Absolutely, if you'll still have me as your husband. Well, Charlotte pretended to consider, tapping her chin thoughtfully. I suppose I could do worse than a handsome chef who makes amazing lasagna. Jackson laughed and pulled her close again. I'll take it. Now, what do you say we head home and start making up for lost time? Charlotte's pulse quickened at the heated look in his eyes. I say lead the way, future husband. Hand in hand, they left the park, eager to begin their new chapter together. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were committed to facing it as a team. Over the next few months, Jackson and Charlotte worked hard to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of honesty and open communication. Jackson started therapy to work through his family issues, with Charlotte's unwavering support. They also threw themselves into wedding planning with renewed enthusiasm. Charlotte was touched by how involved Jackson wanted to be in every detail, from choosing flowers to tasting cakes. I want everything to be perfect for you, he told her one evening as they pored over seating charts. You deserve the wedding of your dreams. Charlotte leaned over to kiss him softly. As long as I'm marrying you, it will be perfect. The big day arrived in a flurry of excitement. Charlotte felt like she was floating as she walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on Jackson's adoring gaze. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I promise to always be honest with you, Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. To support your dreams and face every challenge by your side. You are my best friend, my lover, my home. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you." Charlotte's heart swelled as she repeated her own vows, sealing their commitment with a kiss as their friends and family cheered. The reception was a joyous celebration of their love. Charlotte couldn't stop smiling as Jackson twirled her around the dance floor, both of them laughing and stealing kisses. As the night wound down, Jackson pulled Charlotte aside for a private moment. "I have a surprise for you," he said, practically vibrating with excitement. "Oh?" Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "What kind of surprise?" Jackson took a deep breath. "I found us a place for the restaurant. It's perfect. Great location, lots of character, and I've secured funding to get it started." Charlotte's jaw dropped. "What? How? When did you do all this?" "I've been working on it for months," Jackson admitted. "I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you, in case it fell through. But everything's finalized now. We can start renovations next month if you want." Happy tears sprang to Charlotte's eyes. "If I want? Of course I want. Oh, Jackson, this is amazing." She threw her arms around him, peppering his face with kisses. Jackson laughed, holding her tight. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said softly. "Your support and encouragement gave me the courage to go after my dream. I want us to build this together, as partners in every way." Charlotte's heart felt so full it might burst. "I love you so much. Thank you for making all my dreams come true." "Thank you for being my dream come true," Jackson replied, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. As they rejoined their guests for the last dance of the night, Charlotte marveled at how far they'd come, from strangers to neighbors to lovers to husband and wife. Their journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had only made their bond stronger. Whatever the future held, Charlotte knew they could face it together. With honesty, trust, and an abundance of love, anything was possible. As the music swelled around them, she rested her head on Jackson's shoulder and smiled. Their greatest adventure was just beginning,